What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Grid Encore. I'm your host, Ben Schneider, joined, as always, by Brandon Crossland. Brandon, how's it going tonight? Good to see you again.
How you doing, Ben? Hope everyone has enjoyed their Labor Day, and but it doesn't keep it from being another Motor Monday. So here's to you and yours, and hope you enjoyed the week that was in motorsports. We're gonna talk about the Xfinity, ARCA West, trucks, ARCA, and INDY NXT, and have some guests come in into the show as well.
Is there anything in your cup here today?
There is. Yeah, I'm not going to turn it upside down. There is.
There you go.
Yeah.
I've got very little left here in my Baja Blast. I've been drinking. If you want an idea of how the show might get here later during a couple of our open segments here, I'm already almost a bottle of Baja Blast into it here. But we have a good show planned for everybody tonight. Obviously, our own Joe Samniego on site at Portland for the fourth year running for the Xfinity Series in the final year, at least for the foreseeable future. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. It's unfortunate I couldn't be out there to join him this year, just with the schedule changes being so late in August this year. Didn't work with my schedule, but glad that Joe was still able to make it. Obviously, we've got some other races to talk about as well. ARCA on the dirt at DuQuoin, ARCA West joining the Xfinity Series at Portland, trucks with the Cup Series at Darlington, and then we'll have Kobe Lambeth joining us to talk about Myles Rowe getting the win at Nashville in the INDY NXT finale, and those rumors coming back swirling once again about Colton Herta's future. We'll get into all of that and much more here in just a moment. But before we do that, as always, want to give a shout out to our Patreon investors, Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Thank you so much for continuing to invest in what we do here at the Grid Network. And if you like what you see this evening, if you liked what you saw from Joe this weekend, you want to make that more common occurrence here at the Grid Network on site, on trackside coverage, I should say. Make that a more regular thing here. You can consider joining these six in our Patreon through the link in the description box below. Or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution to us, instead, you can tip us on YouTube through Super Chat or visit our Buy Me a Coffee page as well. This new apartment, man, I'm telling you, I'm right next to an intersection here, and these motorcycles and trucks keep revving up here. There's no place one of these directions here, but I'm in a better studio space for me here, my new place that isn't next door to the neighbors. So we've got one part of that taken care of. The second part, I think we're just going to have to make do with what we've got here. But want to thank you all for bearing with me here the last couple of weeks as I've been in the process of moving and getting set up in my new space. Still haven't fully unpacked yet, but we're doing the best of what we can here. Before we get into the show, Amber brings up something that's, I think, on the minds of every NASCAR fan right now. Are we going to bring up what's going on in NASCAR court right now? I personally am not. You might hear that on the Grid Live weekend shows. Maybe Grid Tonight we'll touch on that. I know Matt White has been pretty disillusioned with the whole process, hasn't wanted to talk about it too much, and quite frankly, it's such a heavy and important subject that I don't want to just speak on it casually without making sure that we have all the facts right here. So that's not part of the show in terms of our plans for tonight. Obviously, as it develops further, we may change that. We're all keeping an eye on it, just as every NASCAR fan is. Certainly important. Don't want to minimize that, but not going to talk about that.
There are some very qualified individuals to talk about the legal parts of what's going on. I think it's safe to say we're on the other side of that. Yes.
Unlike my editor-in-chief at lastcar.info, Brock Beard, I did not go to law school. I did not try to pass the bar exam. Brock got a lot further along in that than me. So I'll be curious to get his thoughts on it, to be quite honest. But as of right now, we're going to leave that be and let the lawyers decide that. All I will say is that it is a very heavy subject, and I don't know that either side, based on what we heard this week, is going to come out of it looking very great. But enough of that for right now. Let's get into the Xfinity Series, and we'll play you some interviews that Joe got here in just a moment. But first, just want to get your reaction real quick, Brandon. The rundown of winners from this week is, it's like a broken record. Stop me if you heard this before, but we're talking about Connor Zilisch here once again for the sixth time in the last 7 Xfinity races. He is pulled into victory lane here. What more can you say of what he's done here in 2025 and continue to do this weekend here at Portland?
Going to be a season we'll never forget about Connor Zilisch, and now confirmed to be with Trackhouse and in some way next season. But this is just a phenomenal year for him, and even through the injuries, able to step right back in the car and and go out and just do what he does, especially on the road courses. You can just forget about it. 6 of the last 7. Connor Zilisch is just on a generational move here this year. And again, it even heightens our talks last weekend about whether Connor Zilisch or Corey Heim not winning the championship, if they just keep adding on to the pile, which they have this weekend, it's going to sweeten that pot even more if it comes up at Phoenix where they fall short.
Yeah, 6 of the last 7, 7 of the last 10, and 13 races since his injury at Talladega, but he had to sit out Texas for. Since he's come back, 13 consecutive top 5 finishes, 10 top 2 finishes. That 4th place at Iowa was really getting in the way of something special. He'd be on a streak of 7 in a row if he had been able to win that one. But obviously can't take away from the job that he's done through all the injuries and everything else that he's had to deal with. Obviously, the big announcement of him moving to the Cup Series. Again, I think it's important for us to temper our expectations a little bit, but even heard Joey Logano come out and say that he thinks Zilisch is better than he was when he was 18, 19 years old, and obviously got promoted to Cup very quickly with Joe Gibbs. So, and Logano, look at him now, he's a 3-time Cup champion. I would think that if Zilisch can live up to the hype and the expectations that he set for himself, not only would he win the Xfinity title this year, he may have a few Cup championships in his future as well. So enough from us here. Like I said, Joe Samaniego on site for us this weekend. He got the entire top 5 to speak with him and give some interviews post-race. Zilisch was obviously in the media center, and then positions 2 through 5 there, William Sawalich, Nick Sanchez, Christian Eckes, and Austin Hill on pit road. Here's what each of them had to say about their race weekend at Portland.
I don't let pressure really get to me. I show up to the track every week and race like nobody's watching, and I feel like that's worked for me. So yeah, I'm gonna try not to change that and not let the wins affect how I go about my preparation and how I prepare for each race, and not let it affect the way I think.
And then from the start of the race to the end of the race, looks like different track conditions. How much did the track evolve during the entire race?
They added some clay, and it certainly helped keep it a little bit cleaner. So honestly, it was better than practice, but it changed a little bit, but nothing crazy.
I mean, that second to last restart was definitely my fault. I locked up all the tires and just slammed into them. But restart after that, we were just not going to make the corner, and everyone kind of had to miss the chicane there, which we all knew that was going to happen, just didn't know when. But we had a good Sound Gear GR Super today. It's fastest Xfinity Mobile.
Now, when it comes to the playoff picture, is that something on your mind throughout the day, or? Over there, so.
Yeah, I mean, it was in our grasp today, but just not on par with the 88. I mean, he's just pretty dang good at these places, and I think second's pretty good to him.
Yeah, somehow I went from 8th to fighting for the lead going into 1, and, I pushed it and tried to make something happen, and, yeah, locked at both fronts, and, I don't know, everyone kind of went out a little bit, so, yeah, we were able to rebound in P3, so it is what it is.
What was your feeling as you were locking up, entering that shoulder chicane, and everybody was in front of you?
Yeah, it's kind of helpless. I don't know, I probably took it 3 or 4 wide down the inside, but I had the opportunity somehow. I don't know what everyone was doing in the restarts, but yeah, I tried to win.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really catch you off surprise when you have a green-white checkered and there's a lot on the line as far as positioning and everything else. So, yeah, super chaotic for sure in our Action Industries Camaro today, but yeah, happy to get out here with a 4th and relatively unscathed.
Now, we know, of course, you also had a big teammate this weekend with Will Brown. Yeah. Was that something that was able to, just get some, road course tips from? Or was that just more something where it's just he's doing his own thing and your team was doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, we always work together as a team here at College Racing, and being around him in the sim and listening to how he breaks down certain things definitely pushed me to be better this week, and I felt like that was kind of evident as far as on-track performance. So, like I said, proud of the team, proud of the effort. Wish we could have been 3 spots better today, but didn't have the pace. So, yeah, we'll just move on and get away.
And last question, we got one more race and then the playoffs. What's the mindset of you and the team with the next race?
Go win. That's pretty simple, right? At least when it sounds that way. But I've always been really good at Gateway. I've raced a truck there for 8 or 9 years. Xfinity Series hasn't been there in a while, but I've always had really good speed there in the past. So we'll do the best we can, and I try to steal one.
Are you feeling a sense of frustration after coming so close?
Yeah, I mean, our Bennett Chevrolet was really good all day. The one car just hit us way too hard on the restart, in the restart zone, and it took the rear tires out of the racetrack, and we spun the tires really bad and just couldn't get going. So not sure if that was, I don't think it was on purpose, not sure if it was for sure, but he just hit me so hard it just hurt our line. And then everybody fanned out 3 wide, and it was chaos getting into turn 1. We got ran off the track, had to come back on the track, and came on with a solid top 5. So yeah, just a frustrating finish to a really solid day. Thought we were going to be able to run at least second at the worst. That's where we ran all day, and ended up 5th. So still came on with a top 5, but definitely frustrating when you outrun those 3 other guys in front of you all day, and then they outrun you at the end.
Can you tell us about that restart where you got the lead? Because it looked like Connor was just unbeatable, and then you were able to get him at that first corner and get the lead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he buzzed the tires on the restart, or if he got hit by the 7 maybe, like how I got hit by the 1. But I got a good push out back from whoever was behind me, and getting into turn 1, I saw somebody wheel hopping. I think it was the 18, and when he ran into the 88 and he had to run like the chicane, I was able to take the lead there, and thought we were actually going to be able to hold him off. He could beat me getting into turn 1 brake zone, but I was really good everywhere else, was comparable to him. So bummer that caution came out, and then having to do that restart to lose more track position and finish 5th was definitely frustrating finish to the day, but we can hold our heads up knowing that we had a car capable of winning today.
And the last question, with the playoffs coming around, I know you all have, I believe, the Roval, no more road courses. How confident are you about potentially going into that championship in Phoenix?
I have all the confidence in the world in my 21 team. Everybody at RCR, ECR brings fast Chevrolets to the racetrack each and every week. We are at a little bit of a disadvantage with the point situation going into start the playoffs, but I think if anybody can dig out of the point deficit that we're in, it's this 21 group.
All right, you heard comments from Austin Hill there and talking about the overtime finish, and there was a little bit of controversy. Some people thought Connor Zilisch obviously cutting the Festival Corner, Shelton chicane area. Some questions about whether or not he followed the proper protocol there, but I think at the end of the day, most people came to the conclusion that the dominant car of the race that deserved to win the race ended up pulling into victory lane regardless. So normally I would ask the question, is that something NASCAR should consider looking at for next year when the series comes back, how they rule that corner? But Brandon, as we all know, Portland will not be on the 2026 NASCAR Xfinity Series schedule. And here's what Connor Zilisch had to say in the post-race press conference when asked about the facility and how he enjoyed his time in Portland and if it's the place that he would like to see return to the schedule one day.
I'm biased with road courses, but yeah, I think it'd be awesome to come back. I feel like, I don't know if it's a Cup Series level track, really. I think Xfinity and trucks and ARCA are great fits for this place, but just given the infrastructure, it's maybe not, there's not enough grandstands, and they'd have to make some improvements to get it to a Cup Series level racetrack, but certainly it has the potential to be, and I flew out Thursday night and went to the coast yesterday, and beautiful part of the country. So yeah, I hope I can come back one day and race here again, but I definitely think that it has potential to one day be a staple in NASCAR.
All right, thoughts from Connor Zilisch there, Brandon. This is our home track in some ways with the Grid Network. Obviously, I've been out there with Joe for 3 years. Joe went out there for the 4th year that this track was on the Xfinity Series schedule. Are you disappointed on a personal level, setting our Grid Network bias aside, that we won't be going back to Portland in 2026? And what do you think of Connor's comments there? Do you think that maybe in the time that it's away from the Xfinity schedule, they could do some upgrades to the facility and eventually land a Cup Series date?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It's it's a beautiful part of the country. I mean, I have not personally set foot in the state of Oregon, but wife and I have been in the state of Washington, and Pacific Northwest, similar climate, and it is stunning up there. But as far as that racetrack and that market for NASCAR, it needs to be there. Now, whether it comes there from Portland International or not, that's your best fit, because these days to build a new facility, it's a whole hassle, especially on the West Coast. So, this would be your best way to do it. I think the facility getting improvements and upgrades while they're away would be the best thing to focus on. I know Watkins Glen, they were able to improve their front stretch grandstands by pulling. I believe it was from Michigan and Michigan International. They were able to pull some of those extra grandstands from days gone by and to improve that front straightaway. And I think that helped their seating capacity. Of course, Watkins Glen, a big hit. Portland, pretty flat. I know you've been there as well, Ben, but it seems pretty flat compared to most places we go to. And I think does really well with IndyCar. Stock car racing being on flat surfaces sometimes does really well. I think Portland has had its, grid network bias aside, I think it's had its good races and maybe some not so good. But I would like to see it come back at some point. But absolutely, if they've got the funds to do it, it would be the time to make some improvements. And if they have aspirations, I think it's perfectly fine if they don't have aspirations for an Xfinity. I mean, for a Cup Series event, but if they do, there's going to be some things that need to be put in place. And I think I heard some live music there in the top when our colleague Joe Samaniego was going through getting the rest of the top five. So sounds like they already have. I'm sure they've got some great pre and post race activities there for fans. But maybe some improvements would be the best course of action here, and maybe the time between having them off the schedule and back on is going to be pretty short.
Yeah, we had trucks there, way back when. Obviously, Greg Biffle, former winner there, he was back in the area, the Pacific Northwest native himself, back in the ARCA West race this weekend. So good to see him back out there. And yeah, Day in the Life says, "How is Portland facility since you've been there?" I'll say, just from my perspective, I think it's great. I do agree with Connor. I think it would certainly need some upgrades if it wanted to host a Cup Series event. Kind of the way the haulers are parked and where the ARCA cars have been stationed, there's not really, it's just kind of like a big parking lot area, right. There's not like a full, open. Garage. Yeah. It's a lot more open space there. So you probably need something a little more permanent in that regard. I mean, even the media center, the media center is very,
feels like a tent.
Yeah. I mean, the first year, especially when we went in 22, it was literally a tent. And that was very interesting because the weather was not very good. They had a higher quality, but still temporary nonetheless, I think set up in 23 and 24. And you'd have to ask Joe what the setup was like this year. It looked from the video there like it was very similar to what I've seen the last 2 years. But I think, Brandon, you were talking about Watkins Glen. I think Nazareth was actually where some of those grandstands came from. I think they also... Well,
I didn't want to bring that up because I know that's near and dear to your Pennsylvania heart.
I know. Yeah, that's all right, though. And I think, I don't know if Watkins Glen also got some from Michigan or if the Nazareth ones also went to both Watkins Glen and Michigan. I feel like that was part of the deal there. But regardless, you're right. Watkins Glen did pick up some grandstands there. I would hope that Portland could get those through their own means without another track closing. But it would be good to get some additional grandstands nonetheless. And then I think, obviously we're talking about the Southern California market with the San Diego race coming back and, what happened to Auto Club Speedway, and running the Clash there at the Coliseum. I think, it would be great for NASCAR to continue to expand their base and their markets where they are. And the Pacific Northwest, I think, is a big part of that for sure.
Sure. Yeah. And forgot about the San Diego announcement for a while there. Yeah, that's going to be huge, man. Being on
it certainly is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amber bringing up an interesting stat here. Justin Allgaier's streak of top 10s at Portland. I think it's actually, let me just pull it back up here. 5th in 22, 2nd in 23 and 24. So it's actually a top 5 streak that he had going the last 3 years, 15th this season. So unable to keep that streak going, unfortunately for him. The main regular season championship rival for Connor Zilisch. And on that note, Brandon, you were talking about what we talked about last week with Zilisch and Heim. And we'll get into Corey here a little bit later. I hate to ask, but if a driver with less than 3 wins this year claims the championship over Zilisch, does NASCAR reevaluate the Xfinity Series playoffs format? We had this question come in while we were playing the video, so I shot this over in the chat. Kevin Harvick in 2020 in Cup, I think, is proof of that. He was having just as dominant of a year. I know this so-called committee that is supposedly talking about the playoffs that, media members are a part of, drivers are a part of. And I saw a quote from Joey come out this week saying, be careful what you wish for, because there are some formats that they've teased or ideas they've thrown out there that would have him as a 4-time champion at this point in his career already. So you can take that for what it's worth there. But
as we've learned, the Cup Series championship is not to determine the best driver. It's to determine the best team overall.
That's true. That's also true there. But no, in all seriousness, I think that, I mean, it would be kind of tragic if Connor doesn't win this Xfinity time. I mean, I say that Justin Allgaier's still, in with a shot at the regular season title, but Zilisch has also missed a race. That his replacement driver Kyle Larson went on to win, as a matter of fact. So you can maybe factor in up to 50 or 60 points from that one race alone, right there, if you sweep both stages and win the race. If he hadn't missed that, he would probably have it clinched by now, if we're being honest. So, yeah, I mean, I know they say they're talking about it. I'm not going to expect any sort of drastic changes just because a dominant driver through the regular season didn't close the deal. And the fact that our fan base is so divided on that, I think is further proof that, this conversation is never going to go away. And I don't think they're going to change anything that drastically at this point. So we'll leave that there. And let me just pull my script back up here. There we go. Let's move on to the ARCA Menards Series West race. At the same track, I should say, Portland International Raceway, if I can get my words out. William Sawalich, congratulations to him winning once again. Regular theme here, the 18 car winning an ARCA sanctioned race. Sawalich got a job done for a second year in a row in the West Series. Thomas Annunziata had a shot at defeating him. The two of them were in a very close, tight battle for the win there. Annunziata ended up running off course there towards the end of the race. Maybe a little bit of payback for some contact that those two had made fighting for the lead earlier in the race, but nonetheless, they still come home as your top two finishers. Alon Day rounding off the podium in third. Greg Biffle, I mentioned him back out there. Great to see him make another West start. He finishes fourth. And then Trevor Huddleston, your top finishing series regular, extending his points advantage just barely over Kyle Keller there, but your two West regulars there in fifth and sixth. And Dale Quarterly still out there running these road course races with another strong top 10 result for the Quarterly racing team. So those are your ARCA Menards Series West results, and you can go check out our YouTube channel, Grid, obviously Grid Network TV. Joe got some good footage from the West race as well, and some interviews, I believe, with Sawalich and Annunziata recapping their race weekends. So that's going to do it for our Portland coverage. We move on now again to another very familiar story in NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series racing. Corey Heim wins once again, his third victory in a row. Some heartbreak for the Front Row Motorsports trucks, Chandler Smith, Lane Riggs especially. It looked like he was one of the few drivers that could maybe take the fight to what Corey Heim was doing there, but unfortunate for him, running into the wall, having some trouble there at the very end. You see him relegated down there to a 17th place finish. Daniel Hemrick, Grant Empinger, Ty Majeski, and how about Trevor Bain rounding out your top five as well? Good to see Trevor back in behind the wheel in one of NASCAR's top three divisions. Timmy Hill, very strong run for that independent, family-owned underdog team there. Strong 8th place result. Good to see him getting some TV time as well. And I also want to say we got some news earlier this week. We'll go through the second page of the results here. One name you're not going to see on this result sheet is Frankie Muniz. He had a fall off of a ladder at his home and has an injury that is going to take, I think he said, 6 to 8 weeks to recover from. So an outside chance, I suppose, that he'll be back in the truck before the end of the year. But certainly going to miss a handful of races in the time being. So we want to send our best to him. I know he's had a tough year. The strong finishes have been hard to come by. It's been a very steep learning curve for him. But hopefully he can come back from yet another setback here and continue to improve. And I don't know, we'll see where he lands for 2026 here. But yeah, I mean, I feel my heart goes out to him because just reading his social media posts, I'm reminded of what he said last year at Portland when he was trying to make the Xfinity race and had the engine let go. He just keeps taking these hits, and it's hard to continue to get back up. But he's a fighter. He's going to, I have no doubt, work very hard to get back in the truck by the end of the year, and we'll see how well he can bounce back from that as well. Now, one final note here from Darlington before we move on to the rest of the show. I want to have a brief open segment here. We might have a comment. Actually, before we do that, let's get to Amber's comment in the chat here. An interesting question for both of us. Brandon, Heim and Zilisch in equal equipment. Who would you put your money on to win that race?
All the more reason, Miss Amber, to bring back the international race, or to bring back IROC, which has
International Race of Champions, sure.
Yes, which has been in the rumor mill of coming back at some point by somebody, but I'd like that to come to fruition, and let's put them in equal equipment and put them up against the best. A Day in the Life says Zilisch, and I think he's right, depending on where they are.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think road course go with Zilisch, but Corey Heim stomped the field at Lime Rock as well. So I don't know. The two of them I think are both in the generational talent threshold. I mean, we're seeing that with what they're doing this year.
Make them teammates, and then it'll be horrific for everybody else.
Yeah, it would be. Teammates at the best team. I think that would be the rest of the field might as well stay home at that point because it's just going to be a battle for third place. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's interesting you bring that up, Brandon, because we're talking about well, we certainly hope they win these championships. Zilisch is probably going to go on to win the regular season championship. Corey Heim obviously did that in the Truck Series, and then we'll see if they can close the deal through the playoffs. But yeah, the international it is ironic, the International Race of Champions, right? I guess they would have to survive this playoff format before we brought them in.
Yeah, you have to be a champion first. Yeah.
That does remind me though. Did you see the tweet from SRX?
I did not know.
It was I forget
Signs
exactly.
Of life, or
it was I think it was a bear or some sort of animal like crawling out of the ground or out of a cave or something. It came out like right as the lawsuit news was all coming to like Gluck and Pockhorst and Kelly Crandall and all of them were tweeting about that. I don't know if that's just somebody who has access to the old account and the old password having some fun and trying to distract from what was going on there, or if there's some credibility behind maybe they want to regroup and bring SRX back. But something else.
From what I remember, it wasn't a goodbye forever. It was we'll see you later.
Well,
when it
Global Rallycross was supposed to be a see you later, and it's been 8 years for that too. So IROC was supposed to be a see you later too, right? I feel like they said we're taking 07 off to come back in 08 maybe, but
that's a bad pattern.
Yeah, most of the time when you hear it's not goodbye, it's see you later, it actually ends up.
It is goodbye.
It is goodbye, but we'll see. Just something else to keep your eye on there.
If that's the case, it was just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, for sure. Before we move on, brief open segment. We've got our main open segment still to come later in the show. Kobe Lamb is going to be joining us shortly here for that. But AJ Allmendinger, who, by the way, had a brilliant run in the Cup Series race, the Southern 500 last night, top 5 finish, maybe even could have finished higher. I know he had some contact with Kyle Larson on the restart. I don't know if he had anything for the 19 to 43. I mean, Chase Briscoe and Eric Jones are just absolutely fantastic at this track. Every year we keep coming back here. But AJ was asked during the media bullpen this weekend, obviously being a Colleague Racing driver, Colleague Racing in the news regarding the Truck Series and potentially running up to 5 full-time trucks with Ram next year. He was asked, would you consider getting behind the wheel of one of Colleague Racing's truck teams? And AJ's answer was the same answer that he's always given throughout the last however many years it's been now, 5, 6, 7 years that he's been racing with Colleague, whether it's full-time, part-time, Cup, Xfinity, whatever the schedule is. He says, I will do whatever Matt Colleague and Chris Rice want me to do. I think he's been on the record a couple other times saying he would like to be in Cup. He's happy where he's at, but some people think back to how burnt out he got at JTG Doherty, which ultimately led to him being released from his contract that he had signed a couple of years before it was set to expire. This is an interesting prospect, I think, and it's one that I think AJ should seriously consider. One that I think Matt and Chris should seriously consider for him, not to take away from what he can do in the Cup Series and what we saw him do this weekend. But think about this, Brandon. No SVG, no Connor Zilisch, probably no Corey Heim. We expect him to, at least on a part-time basis, move up the ladder. We're hearing some Sam Hunt Racing 2311 Toyota rumors. Who knows what's going to happen with the lawsuit there, but we believe he's probably going to move on from full-time truck competition at the very least. 5 road and street courses, a full 20% of the Truck Series schedule next year. And the finale is back at Homestead, which, since he moved to Kaulig Racing, has been one of his best ovals, particularly in Cup Series competition. So like I said, when he moved back to Cup the first time in 2023, and why I was a little disappointed that they were doing that for him over at Kaulig, even though I understood it from a business perspective as a veteran driver, wanting to try to get that program up and running and put a full-time driver in that car. This feels like a tailor-made schedule for somebody like AJ Allmendinger. And the Truck Series was founded as, I think, a place for drivers like AJ at this point in their careers to go continue to compete for race wins and championships. And I don't even know, honestly, if Ram has to be a top manufacturer right out of the gate. I think as long as they're just a level above basic competency, as long as they're maybe they're good, not great. They start out as a mid-pack team, but AJ can get them a win maybe right as the season's kicking off at St. Pete. We got that coming onto the schedule next year. All you have to do is win one of the first 18 races, and then you're in the playoffs. You're going to have the Roval back in the playoffs. You got a finale at Homestead. If you can continue to build up that program, once you get that win and get yourself locked into the playoffs there, I really think he could be a legitimate championship contender. So, Brandon, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but that is something that I think AJ, and as AJ always says, all the men and women at Kaulig Racing, when they're planning their 2026 schedule out and their driver lineup, I think it is something that is seriously worth considering for AJ Allmendinger to do next year.
I think you laid the case out quite well there. I mean, as long as Dodge is, which I love saying that Dodge is going to be a part of the picture next year. That feels so good to say, and it's true. As long as they're competent next year, they don't have they're not the butt of a joke of just engine issues after engine issues. If Ilmore engines, it should be level all around as far as that goes. So, as long as they can give him a running truck and it's competent, it's a tailor-made for someone like AJ Allmendinger. And I would love to get that trend going again of, like you said, what the Truck Series was sort of built on as just competitors that have paid their dues and at the top level, and they want to still run for wins and championships. You can do that in the Craftsman Truck Series, and AJ Allmendinger is really good at these road courses. And you put that many into the schedule, and you finish it off with his best track. It's picture perfect.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine a championship 4 potentially next year if somebody like AJ and Grant Empinger and maybe hopefully Stuart Friesen can come back? We still wish him the best as he continues to recover. But I think it's good for the series when obviously we've said it on this show all year. Corey Heim is almost too good for this series right now, I feel like, and that's not to discredit the drivers that are in this series, but he is a talent that I think should at the very least be racing on Saturdays at this point in his career, if not Sundays already. I think that it would bring back a little bit of identity of what the Truck Series identity used to be. If something like this were to happen. So again, all due respect to AJ, obviously he credits Kaulig for kind of saving and reviving his career. I think he's been on the record saying, he had 3 wins in NASCAR, before he joined that team. And now he's up to, 21, I think, 3 in Cup, 18 in Xfinity, if I recall correctly. So, he's always going to do whatever they want him to do and whatever they think is best for what he can bring to that program. But just from what I see being laid out for next year, I think the best thing for Kaulig, for their truck program especially, would be to put him in one of their trucks and be that veteran voice in that truck program to help build that up.
And can I just compliment AJ Allmendinger for a moment? Just that loyalty that he has for Kaulig Racing. You can say whatever you want about Kaulig and the direction they've gone in some recent years, but I just got to compliment AJ Allmendinger at the point he is in his career. He can put up with whatever he wants to, and the fact that he is loyal to a company and loyal to a team, a group of guys, and what they're trying to do. And that, I'll be your utility player. I will be there for whatever role you need me to be in. I'm ready for it. Just give me a call. That has something special about it that you don't see too often, I think. And it needs to be spoken for. I think that's a really cool thing that we're witnessing right there.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about the culture over at Colleague as well, because again, I remember how burnt out he got racing it. Again, no disrespect to what is now Hayek with JTG and everything, but just trying to. I remember after he won Watkins Glen in 2014, he said, I want to stay with this team and try to help build it into a weekly contender, and it just never really got to that point, and he got burnt out and went to play golf and went to do some TV with NBC, thought his career was pretty much over. And now here we are 7 years later. And, he's almost he hasn't had it quite to the level that say like a Martin Truex Jr. had with Furniture Row, but, a guy that only had a handful of wins in NASCAR, has gone on to be a late bloomer in that sense and do so much more in this, last act of his career here. And I think this will be his last act. I think that, he's also been on record saying, whether as long as he's racing in NASCAR at this point in his career, it's going to be Colleague racing car or truck potentially with what's developed here for next year. So we'll keep our eye on that. But again, I doubt they're watching this, but if they are, I think you guys should really consider that, because I think that the groundwork has been laid for what could be a really successful partnership and a really successful season if they decide to go down that path. All right, we move on now to the main ARCA Menards Series, the National Tour at DuQuoin. We'll go through these results here quickly, and then hopefully we can get Kobe connected here, and we'll go into some wheel discussion and finish it off with INDY NXT. But in the meantime, congratulations to Brendan Queen. Again, sounding kind of like a broken record here with Zilisch and Xfinity, Heim and trucks, and then Brendan Queen doing it once again, the championship leader, extending his advantage at the DuQuoin State Fairgrounds this weekend. Tough break for Brent Crews, getting caught up in a late race incident. He was going for the bonus dirt double to sweep both the dirt races here, the ARCA Menards Series season for 2025. Unfortunately, couldn't close the deal there. And also some trouble for Max Reeves. The 18 car, as we mentioned, of course, always so dominant in this series, but Max lost a couple of laps due to a couple of spins, had to settle for a 10th place finish. And then really heartbreaking run for Jade Avedissian, who was running in and around the top 5 most of the night, making her ARCA Menards Series debut. She unfortunately had a problem that brought her into the pits for a couple of laps. I think Phil Parsons was saying on the broadcast he thought it maybe was a battery issue. Not really sure if we got a definitive answer on that, because the broadcast was very slow to get to have the cameras pan to her rather. And by the time they did so, she was already in the pits, and then ended up spinning out again after she rejoined the track, although her night was pretty much already lost at that point already, unfortunately. So don't let the 17th place finish be indicative of the run that she had. Hopefully she's going to be able to come back and give it another shot. I think she's got one West Series race already penciled in on her schedule or calendar for the rest of the year. But unfortunate for her to see a good run be wasted with very little to show for it. But again, hopefully she'll be able to bounce back from that later this year and into 2026 and beyond there. So congratulations, though, to Butterbean on winning the race, and good run for Lawless Allen, her Avedissian's Venturini Motorsports teammate there as well. He needed that second place finish based on how the last couple of races have gone for him. Kelly Kofsky, the dirt veteran, up there in the top 3. Another great run for him. Isabella Robusto bringing home a strong 4th place finish again, despite her minimal dirt track experience. And then Tim Monroe, good to see him up there in the top 5 as well for Fast Track Racing. That small team doing a lot with a little there. Great finish for him. So that's your ARCA Menards Series rundown. And I believe we have Kobe backstage here. So just give me 2 seconds here to change the graphics over, and we will welcome Kobe back to the Encore show. Kobe, great to see you, man. How's it going?
Going well. Yeah. Been a long weekend. Been helping Joe remotely from Portland, getting the website looking as nice as possibly can. Did a 2-hour wrap-up show today. I had no idea we had so much to talk about. Yeah, to talk about from Zandvoort, Nashville, Darlington, and then Paraguay, and then the grid ranking as well. Congratulations, Alex Below, on that. Becoming the unofficial grid ranking world champion for the year 2025. So that was a big deal there. We had a lot to talk about, and excited to talk more racing here tonight, doing the Labor Day double again.
Well, it's great to have you back here, Kobe. Again, we usually don't get to talk to you here on Mondays on the Encore show, but the opportunities come up here. We're going to get to INDY NXT a little bit later, but First and foremost, happy to have you here for this open segment because I know we were fired up in our grid chat this afternoon. The IndyCar Series, of course, just wrapped up for 2025. We got a tweet from at Bobby Parsons 07 on X/Twitter. Now, this account, not sure exactly who runs it, but they have apparently had some inside sources that have come true. They correctly called Elio Castroneves and Martin Truex Jr. running the Daytona 500 this year. For example, seemed to correctly predict the Cadillac lineup for next year in Formula One. This account is saying, quote, Colton Herta will join Prema Racing next season. The American IndyCar race winner will compete in FIA Formula 2, aiming to earn enough super license points to secure a Formula 1 seat in 2027. His replacement at Andretti is still to be determined, with Will Power emerging as the favorite. Now, to be clear, this is all unconfirmed as of yet. And as I understand it, Will Power, obviously, his contract situation at Penske has been very much in the news. We believe that meeting took place today. That's the news we were hearing yesterday, at least. So that's the major piece of the silly season puzzle that still has to fall into place here. But Kobe, since you're our guest, I'll just go to you first here. Colton Herta is going to be 26 in March. That might as well be 46, I think, by Formula 2 standards. This is a very surprising turn of events. It's a turn of events that I think we would have been more likely to see, would have expected to see maybe 3 or 4 years ago, but we could be seeing it right here, right now, going into 2026. What would be your reaction if we did get confirmation that Colton Herta is going to, in the words of J.R. Hildebrand from a few years ago, go effing do it and try to get a Formula One seat by any means necessary here?
Yeah, Ben, there's a lot to unpack with this situation. And the Bobby Parsons you mentioned, I don't have no idea who that guy is, but if someone is, getting multiple stories right, yeah, take it with a grain of salt. But maybe he is an insider who is more connected than we think. But it real interesting post that he made on social media. Looking at it right now, yeah, interesting that they would send him to Prema. I know, we talked a lot about Prema this year in the IndyCar Series and how they have always, been one of the gold standards of the junior racing categories in Europe. But since they switched to this new F2 car and engine, Prema's basically, instead of becoming the gold standard, they've kind of just fallen, down the running order quite a bit. And they're no longer seen as like the ultimate favorite in FIA Formula 2. And their current drivers this year in F2 is Gabriel Mini and Sebastian Montoya. And looking at the points right now, Sebastian is 9th, Gabriel is 12th. So not really inspiring when you look at where the current Prema drivers are, but maybe they view Colton Herta as an upgrade here. Yeah, it's just really interesting situation here. And for Colton Herta, looking at the super license situation, got those points pulled up right now. Positions 1, 2, and 3 in FIA Formula 2. You get the 40 points you need to go get your super license to be eligible to compete in Formula 1, while only the IndyCar champion, when this year, Alex Palou, you get those 40 points to get a super license. So if the rumors of Palou to Red Bull were to be true, he would obviously, be right up there. Well, actually, the points he's had in the last few years. So he's already good to go to F1 if he wanted to. But if he wasn't, winning an IndyCar championship could, that could be your ticket to F1. And then, like, after positions 1, 2, and 3 in FIA Formula 2, 4th place in the championship, you get 30 super license points. 5th, 20th, 6th get 10. And then 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, you get 8 points, 6 points, 4 points, and 3 points. And then IndyCar, when you go to the 2nd place finish in the championship, instead of getting 40 for the championship win, you get 30. Then 3rd gets 20. And then 4th is 10. And then 5th through 10th, you get 8, 6, 4, 3, 2, and then a single point for the 10th place finisher. So by looking at this, the FIA view in that Formula 1, they view IndyCar as a lesser championship compared to Formula 2. And I think it would be a shame, if a driver like Colton Herta has to end up going to Formula 2, because I think you can perform well enough to go to the IndyCar Series without needing to take that next step. But one of the reasons why I believe that if it does happen that he could go to Formula 2 is to, get used to the F1 racing environment rather than come from IndyCar and go and get run your FP1 sessions, get the super license. You could probably just do that and he'll be fine. But I'm sure they want him to get used to the environment, since it's a night and day difference being in a Formula 1 paddock compared to an IndyCar paddock. And Nathan Brown from the Indy Star, he wrote a really good article on the situation about Colton Herta, talking about, the dangers of this. And the title of this is archaic system may lead Colton Herta to take huge risks in racing career for lower category series. And in this article, Nathan interviewed Ed Carpenter racing driver Alexander Rossi, who we all know as an ex-Formula One driver, ended up getting a few races there before his F1 life come to an end. And Alexander Rossi basically said that one of the reasons why you may want Colton Herta to do F2 before going to F1 is because of the Pirelli tire, because the Pirelli tire is much different than the Firestone's IndyCar tire that Colton Herta has, used throughout his IndyCar career. And Alexander Rossi's quoted by saying it's not an IndyCar driving style. Let's put it that way. And then he also talked about it being European racing. A lot of politics are going to go into play. And he said that they over there in F1 circles, they make sure the people they want to succeed, and the ones they don't want to succeed don't get to succeed. And being an American driver in a European environment like that, I'm sure Logan Sargent can tell some stories about what he went through, and Alexander Rossi is as well, given his experience. I think it's safe to say Colton Herta goes to Formula 2. He's going to have a massive target on his back, not just from the F2 paddock, but everybody on the entire road to F1. He's going to be under so much pressure. It's probably going to be, a significant amount of pressure that we haven't seen on a driver in a long time. I know there was a lot of pressure and eyes on Kimi Antonelli last year in Formula 2, but I think it might almost rival that since Colton Herta is an American, and people have been hyping him up for so long now that they say that this kid could be the next American F1 driver, that he has what it takes to get the job done. And the big risk you take going here, what if he goes over there and, completely flops? Let's say he's, finished outside the top 10 in the championship, then we're never going to hear the end of it, from all those people who don't want to see an American driver at the pinnacle of motorsport. And it's been like, see, that's why, you guys can't come over here and do this. But I think it's obviously a huge risk for Colton Herta if he decides to go to Formula 2 to try to eventually get into F1, because if he goes to Formula 2, and gets the super license points that he needs and the experience and performs extremely well, then I guess it was worth the risk. But I fear like what happened if he doesn't, if he goes out there and he finishes outside of the points and struggles and has a whole lot of incidents. And then Joshua Burke's talking about the unpredictable engine that they have in F2 now, because they have a lot of issues with that. They need a brand new engine, honestly, because I don't know what's wrong with this engine. It's just sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and it's really hurt quite a few drivers since we switched to the new engine and chassis in Formula 2. So, and plus you mentioned the politics that Rossi talked about in that article. It makes me really worried about Colton Herta and what could potentially happen. And in Nathan's article, he spoke to someone who has ties to, that part of the world in F1. When asked about a potential move to Colton Herta, this person said, I think that's crazy. I think it's a huge risk. And then Alexander Rossi was asked by Nathan, what do you think this could potentially be damaging to a driver's career if you go to Formula 2 and not perform? And Rossi is quoted saying, it's seen as a lower category. Let's not forget about the FIA and how they assign points. It's seen as a lower category. So yes, theoretically, it would be a risk. And the reason why Colton Herta was highly touted as a potential F1 prospect, because he got on the road to Indy, did extremely well. And then in his third career IndyCar start, I believe he was just 18 years old at the time. He won that Circuit of the Americas. I remember that victory. It was a very impressive for an 18-year-old kid, very young in IndyCar, in his third career start, to come out there and win, because you don't really see many 18, 19-year-old kids in IndyCar coming out and winning so quickly. And, then the hype about Colton Herta, it started to rise that he could be this guy. And he really looked the part quite a bit. And I remember in his rookie season, ended up winning twice. He won the season finale at Laguna Seca as well. Ended up finishing top 10 in the points. In the very next year, he finished third in the championship. So a lot of great things. And then after that, slid down to fifth. And then 2022, 2023, not so good years, finishing 10th in the championship. 2024 was a huge bounce back year, finish runner up. And then, then we're like, maybe, it was just 2 down years for Colton, and maybe he can get up there, and continue to show what he's worth. And then, this year, 2025, winless year, Colton wasn't really to show, much of anything. And I said this on the Grit Tonight show when these rumors first came out. I said in the past, I thought Colton Herta's his prospects for Formula One were much higher. And honestly, I think given his performances in IndyCar in recent years, I think it's kind of cooled off quite a bit, and I'm not sure, if he has that it factor about going to F1, and end up succeeding. I think at this point in his career, it would probably be in his best interest, to just stay in IndyCar, and continue to build and try to compete for wins and championships. But if you go to Formula 2, it's certainly a massive risk that you would end up taking. So I'm not really sure what Colton Herta is going to do next. I just hope he ends up making the right decision, because the consequences could be really heavy. And I know motorsport.com put out a graphic today from an account on X titled Champ Website, talking about, they say you win Indy 500, you go down in history forever. You win the F2 feature race, on the streets of Azerbaijan and Baku. They say you'll become nothing more than a column in a spreadsheet. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's certainly one way to put it. But just to summarize everything I said, I brought a lot of information with me tonight. But I think it would be great if Colton Herta succeeds in this. But if he doesn't, oh man, this is not going to end well at all for him.
And thank you for all that, Kobe. And as much risk as there is for him to take this endeavor, I keep looking at the states. I keep looking at the IndyCar side of this equation. And the state that Will Power is in right now, and his future being uncertain, and where he's going to end up, or whether he's going to call it a career, that Andretti Global spot would be a good comparable place, I think, for someone of Will Power's stature to be going to if he has to leave Team Penske. But yeah, also Colton Herta, his career in IndyCar has not really been the same as what it once was in 2020 and 21, 22 or so. It has kind of tapered off. So, if he takes this leap, if these rumors are true, you said it, he's going to have to go over there and perform. It's going to have to be the most perfect debut season in Formula 2 to make this work. I mean, just a while ago, whenever we thought that Michael and Mario Andretti were behind the whole Cadillac deal, we kept saying on this show that he was one of our top prospects to go over there and be a part of that Cadillac seat. I mean, we thought about this before of him going over to Europe, but with at least this season anyway, with Alex Palou and his domination in the NTT IndyCar Series, and how it seems like he's not going over to the other side of the world anytime soon, and he's going to stay right where he is and going to keep dominating. Now, how much that's true has yet to be seen, but I really feel like it. I'm right there with you. It's a huge risk, but I think Colton Herta could flip a switch if he wanted to, and but there is a lot of things to get acclimated to there. You talked about the tire difference, the culture difference, the politics behind, the hearsay of, they decide who gets to succeed and who doesn't, but. Out of all this, though, I keep hearing in the back of my mind, right? If you leave this, your chances of winning the Indianapolis 500 are impossible if you're not here. So, I mean, what's more important in his career? Is it to take the F1 route, or is it to be an Indianapolis 500 champion? I think it would be the latter on that one. But yeah, winning the F2 feature at Monaco is. Okay. Yeah,
it's definitely impossible next year. We all know that with the clash between the Canadian Grand Prix. There's not going to be a situation. Well, I guess maybe there could be if they just. But yeah, I mean, races are going to literally be happening at the exact same time, not even on the exact same day, which is still unfortunate. And I keep hoping and praying that cooler heads might prevail and they can maybe change that last minute. But I'm just thinking back to the conversations that I've had this afternoon. I was pretty fired up when I saw the Bobby Parsons tweet again. Take that with a grain of salt, but they have been right in the past before. Our friend Jonathan Field asked this question to all of us in our chat. If you got the opportunity to run F1, would you take it if you have a chance? If Colton Herta had gotten the super license exemption and gotten the AlphaTauri seat in 2023, I think in hindsight, thank goodness he didn't with the current state of Red Bull's program. But if he had gotten that, absolutely no judgment there. Go, as JR said, go freaking do it. Like that's a once in a lifetime. We thought once in a lifetime, at least opportunity. Who knows where that could lead if you perform well in that seat. F1's the pinnacle of motorsport. If he wants to do it, let him do it. At that point in his career, I would have been all for that. I don't see this as Colton Herta having a chance to go to Formula One. I see this as Colton Herta having a chance to go to Formula 2 to potentially land a Formula One seat. And by the way, we talked on this show before, even if he goes out and wins the F2 championship, maybe he's got a direct line with Cadillac, and Mario's still on the board over there. And obviously Michael Andretti's involvement with Andretti Autosport. I mean, maybe there's a more direct line there than there would be for a regular F2 champion. I don't know, but we've seen F2 champions in the past have to sit out a year or two, or maybe go race something else entirely because there just isn't an open seat for them. And you know what? The ironic thing here is that, you know, both of you guys said, you know, Colton's going to have to go set the world on fire. He has 30 points from that runner-up finish in 2024. So he could theoretically, I think he ended up 7th this weekend in the final standings, which gets him another, for whatever it's worth, gets him another 4 points. So going into next year, he could actually, if I'm reading this chart correctly, he could finish as low as 8th in the F2 championship, get those 6 points. That would get him to the magic number of 40. He'd be set for 2027. He could honestly probably finish lower than that because you get 1 point for doing an FP1 session as long as you run 100 kilometers. I keep saying if an F1 team wants him that badly, you know, he's on 35 points right now. He could do 5. There's still more than 5 races left to go in this season. He could do 5 FP1s and be ready for 2026 if he wanted to. So he is right on the cusp. He is very close. He wouldn't need to win the championship or even need to finish top 3 to get the seat, to be eligible for the seat. But I think he would need to go out and at the bare minimum finish top 3 or ideally win the F2 championship outright to prove to the doubters that he's serious about this and that he has the potential to maybe go on and actually perform well in Formula One. But again, the thing that I keep coming back to is even if he does that, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a situation in IndyCar where maybe, okay, you know, Andretti Global right now is not, you know, a top 2 team in IndyCar right now. They're not going to contend with Ganassi or maybe McLaren or Penske. Obviously, Penske had a very down year. They bounced back at the finale, certainly with Newgarden and McLaughlin, but you're not going to beat Alex Palou right now. Kyle Kirkwood's the number 1 driver on your own team at this point, but maybe you could win a race or 2 per year. You're certainly going to have a chance to compete at the Indianapolis 500. Would you rather be in that position, or would you rather go to F2, have to sacrifice a year of your career in a feeder series, then maybe get a Formula One seat, and then you're fighting for 13th in a Cadillac or a Haas or an RB or a team like that? I just don't see a seat at McLaren opening up anytime soon. I don't see a seat, you know, who knows how many years Lewis Hamilton has left. I don't think Colton Herta would be the next in line whenever Lewis decides to call it quits. I don't know if he'd be the next in line at Aston Martin once Fernando Alonso calls it quits. I don't see an open seat at Mercedes right now. They've got 2 young, solid drivers in George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, the prodigy, but they're trying to, you know, that they put in their seat at this point in his career, this early at 18 years old. They think very highly of him. I'm sure they want him around for a long time. And I certainly don't want him getting involved in the Red Bull situation right now with where that team is at and, you know, the carousel of second drivers that have been teammates to Max Verstappen. Maybe Max Verstappen's going to be at Mercedes in a couple of years, and then there certainly isn't an open seat there with Kimi Antonelli and everything. So I just, from looking to draw it all back here and, you know, put a bow on this, it seems to me this is a very high risk, low reward situation that Colton Herta could find himself in. The chances of him winning an F2 championship and then getting a midfield seat in 2027, and then somebody like McLaren saying, hey, Lando, we're sorry, but how can we not sign this Colton Herta kid who's setting the world on fire, and him ending up being Oscar Piastri's teammate and competing for a world championship? I mean, the odds of that are so astronomically slim that I don't see the big, I mean, maybe you could look back and say, well, I was the best American F1 driver of the last 30, 40 years. I had a 3 or 4 year career, scored some points, maybe got a podium once or twice. I mean, that to me is the realistic ceiling that Colton Herta would find himself in if he takes this F1 path and everything goes right. That's assuming everything goes right. It could not. He could stall out and maybe not even finish top 5 in the championship in F2. And then I think it's just, you know, you look back and you'd be given the trolls who constantly, you know, the F1 elitists, if you will, you'd be giving them all sorts of material to work with there. And on the flip side, I know people say like, oh, he's you know, Brian Herta's his father. He's got connections. He can always go back. You know, He certainly can. Michael Andretti never won the Indy 500. He went off to Formula One. He was there and sent his teammate over at McLaren. It didn't go very well. He lost a year of his career doing that. He lost a few years of Indy 500 chances because of the split. Does he look back on his career now and maybe say, was it really worth it, losing out on the chance to run Indy for a couple of years to go chase, an F1 seat? I don't know. So again, it all comes down to me for what Colton wants. If Colton wants to do this, I will be rooting for him. I'll be pulling for him to succeed and prove all his doubters wrong. And I would love nothing more than for him to go set the world on fire over there and end up in a top Formula One seat and us have some American representation on the grid. But I say this as somebody that has been, nobody on this network, I don't think, has been arguing more so for an American F1 driver over the last several years. I don't know that anybody on this network took the stance that I took when we got the news that Canada is going to clash with the Indy 500 next year. They know how disillusioned I am with IndyCar right now. I said in the chat on Grid tonight, I might watch the Canadian Grand Prix over the Indy 500 next year. That's how fed up I am with what's going on in the IndyCar series. And I am sitting here telling you, I am praying that Colton Herta is back in IndyCar next year and not in a Prema Formula 2 seat. That's just where I'm at. If this were 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, at that point in his career, I would say absolutely take that chance. But I just feel like that ship has sailed at this point in his career, and the risk far outweighs the potential reward if he goes and chases an F1 seat at 26 years old.
Yeah, certainly, Ben. I agree with everything you said, and like I was saying earlier, I think that Colton Herta, if this happens, like the pressure on him is going to be significant, and it'll be interesting to see how he would navigate, the politics of racing, on the European scene, learning tracks that he's never been to before. And one thing I forgot to mention, before he got on the road to Indy, Colton Herta actually moved to Europe and raced in Europe, so he knows some of the F2 tracks on the schedule. So it's not like he's going in completely blind and all of that. And plus, you have the simulators where you can do that, but nothing beats doing the real thing. There's only be like a small handful of tracks that he's never been to, so at least he does have some experience on those tracks. But at the end of the day, it's certainly going to be a difficult task to try to go out there and perform right away. Just seeing where Prema is right now in Formula 2, that makes me kind of worry. If it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I'm like, yes, this is the best possible seat you can be in with Prema. But Prema, like I say, since they switched over to this new engine and chassis, they haven't had the same magic. They just haven't been able to make it work, regardless, of what driver you put in that Prema car. It just hasn't been able to work. Now, Gabriel Meni and Sebastian Montoya, highly touted drivers, they haven't been able to do much in the Prema car this year. And I wonder how Colton would do in that car. And, on the flip side, we talk about Colton, potentially leaving IndyCar going to F2. How about the drivers who went from F2 into IndyCar? Look at Christian Lundgaard. He's had success. Got Marcus Armstrong, great season. A lot of top 10s this year. You obviously have Callum Milot as well. Then you have Robert Schwartzman, who had never been on an oval track before and won the pole for the biggest race in the world. So we have seen success, go the other way, from F2 to IndyCar. When you talk to those drivers with F2 experience, they say that it's not that hard to adapt their driving style from the F2 car to the Indy car. So maybe if you flip it the other way around, minus the Pirelli tire, maybe it won't be as big of a transition for Colton Herta as we think. Maybe it'll go like it's gone with F2 to IndyCar. Maybe you go to IndyCar to F2, and maybe it won't be as bad once he learns, the driving style with the Pirelli tires.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, again, I have, like I said, I'll be rooting for Colton if he does this to prove all his doubters wrong. I'm not going to put it past him to go out and perform there. I'm just saying, if he doesn't, again, you give the trolls and the elitists, a lot of material to work with, unfortunately. So, again, Brad, I don't know if you have any final thoughts on this before we close out this segment here, but that's the phrase I keep coming back to: high risk, low reward at this point in Colton Herta's career.
Yeah, it's one of those things I just kind of hope is a rumor, because I feel like an Indy 500 championship again, or to be called an Indy 500 champion, would far outweigh the, like you said, Ben, the possibility. It's not even a guarantee of a Formula One seat, and I mean, even if you make it there, what then? What then of your career? What will it be said of what you're able to contribute? So I mean, I think he's best to wait it out where he is, and hopefully this is just not going to come to fruition. But if it does, I hope he comes out of the gate running and with plenty of experience to back himself up.
Yeah, well, and again, just one final point on this. I mentioned his age at the start of this. Brandon, we've been talking a little bit on this show this year about Richard Verschoor, who's now in year 5 of Formula 2. Colton Herta's, I think, 8 or 9 months older than Richard Verschoor. So Richard Verschoor, there have been conversations about, what is he still doing here? He's too old for the series. He's had his chances. He's taking a seat from another young driver that, maybe has more realistic path to Formula 1. I mean, again, it almost feels like, it's so out of place for Colton to be taking what I think is a step down at this point in his career. I think,
Absolutely.
if you had to map out a road to Formula 1 ladder and you went, fully in terms of American championships, I suppose IndyCar would be the last stepping stone before Formula 1. But nobody ever thinks of IndyCar like that, right? I think very rarely would a driver say, okay, I'm here in America, I'm going to stay in America, work my way up the road to Indy, go through Indy NXT, win an IndyCar championship, and then I'm going to start talking to Formula 1. Any American that's tried to get to F1 the last several years, they've moved over to Europe, they've raced in the European championships and tried to go up the ladder that way. You're seeing it right now with Jack Crawford, who's had a couple of years in Formula 2, and I think is significantly closer to an F1 seat than Colton Herta would be, even if he makes this jump next year.
Ask Alexander Rossi, ask Marcus Ericsson why they left, and they'll tell you quite plainly.
Yeah, there you go. We'll catch up on the chat here, and then we'll move on and get some thoughts from our viewers. A Day in the Life says it drives. Yeah, and there you go. It drives me up a wall. I think he's supposed to say every time there's some snob tells me F1 is better than IndyCar, come to Indianapolis for the month of May. Well, again, I will say, as somebody that's been very critical of IndyCar over the last 12 to 24 months, Paul Page said it best. There's nothing else like it. So do you give up a shot at the Indy 500 for, again, maybe a chance to chase an F2 or an F1 seat rather for 2 or 3 years? I don't know if it's worth. It'd be a little bit different to me if he already had a 500 victory. If this were Alex Palou doing that, I think Alex Palou could, if he stays in IndyCar like his teammate Scott Dixon has all these years, he could maybe challenge some of Scott Dixon's records. 10, 15 years down the road if he continues to perform at this level. And if he were to chase an F1 seat, he'd be losing out on a year or two of that opportunity for him. But, I could understand where Palou would maybe say, well, I've got nothing left to prove. I've won 4 championships. I've won a 500 now. That's not Colton Herta. So, again, I think Colton still has enough left to prove here in America in the IndyCar series first. Adam brings up a good point. Kobe touched on this a little bit. European racing, totally different than USA racing. We have seen drivers go the other way, like you said, IndyCar to F2. I mean, or F2 to IndyCar rather. Alexander Rossi as well. Obviously he made it to F1, did those 5 starts with Manor, but GP2, the equivalent at the time. It took him a little bit of time to get up to speed in the IndyCar series. Obviously he won the Indianapolis 500 his rookie year, but the road and street courses, took him some time to adapt, even though he was with a top team in Andretti when he made that switch. And then A Day in the Life says if Colton is at Prema, could them and Andretti have a partnership in IndyCar and switch to Honda? That's an interesting proposal there, Kobe. Brandon, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. We've been hearing maybe that Prema's just got to hang on to their team as a whole because of the whole charter situation now in the IndyCar series. But what are your thoughts on Colton sparking an alliance between those two teams if this is the path that he chooses to go down?
Yeah, I think it would be huge for Prema's IndyCar program if this was able to happen. I know Andretti, had recently, lost their partnership with Meyer-Shank Racing, who switched to Ganassi. So if Andretti was looking for another team, I think Prema would be really good. You mentioned the charter system over there, Ben, and especially, with the Marshall Pruitt report that came out heading into championship weekend that the race we just watched yesterday in Nashville, that could potentially be Prema's final IndyCar race ever if they're not able to find any sponsors. Then I believe I read that the person who was supposed to be funding the program was planning put $60 million into this IndyCar program, and that's up in the air. And given the fact that they're losing out on so much money since I don't have a charter, it's so hard to run these open cars. We've seen it, in other series, obviously, and it's no different in IndyCar that trying to run 2 cars full time in this series without a charter. It's not really the smartest thing. It's not really feasible from a financial standpoint. But when you have an outside backer who's pouring in a significant amount of money, it obviously makes it a lot easier. But just to answer the question here, I think that it would be huge for Prima if they were able to tie in some sponsorships like with Andretti, to try to bring this team up to speed. And I know we saw Prima, outside of Robert Schwartzman's pole for the Indy 500 and Callum Milot having some good results on the back end of the season. It's really been what we expected from a new team in IndyCar, that they're going to have a lot of growing pains and struggles. And Prima, they really struggled on the pit lane, and they've had like some of the slowest pit stops out of all the teams in IndyCar this year, and a bunch of sloppiness. So that's not really a surprise, because it's a new team and they need to continue to build up there. And there was one last thing about Colton Herta here. Ben, you're talking about how he could be leaving a chance to compete for IndyCar race wins and championships in the Indy 500 crown to go to F2. And I know the goal is F1, but there's no guarantee he gets an F1 seat. If 2026 goes terribly wrong and he has to spend another year in F2, then you're pushing 2028 to F1. And like, if he doesn't perform in either year, then basically you've wasted 2 years of a potential IndyCar career, to go basically chase nothing.
Yeah, well, and then you would lose your 30 points from 2024, where you've got the majority of the points.
And then it gets harder.
Already. Yeah, then it gets even harder from there, of course, because those points are only good for 3 years. So, Brandon, any final thoughts on Herta and Formula 2, Prima, or any of that? And then we'll move on to Indy next.
Yeah, Prima actually having a technical alliance with Andretti Global makes a ton of sense now that you say it out loud. I mean, just that whole Italian background with the Andretti family, and Prima, I think has had safe to say a pretty, besides the pit stops, of course, and some of the early season DNFs, but like some trouble there in the first couple of weeks, but just overall a great start to being in IndyCar if they can just keep their finances okay. But I think that would be a great technical alliance, and also a great place for Colton to go if he is going to go to F2, where he could land. But again, that is a good point there, Dana Live.
Yeah, a handful of top tens between Milot and Schwartzman, and obviously, of course, the highlight of their year, I think, the shock pole of the Indianapolis 500. It would be a shame if this is only a one and done for them. But again, we have the charter system now that complicates things. Has been complicating things in NASCAR for about a decade now, and continues to with this lawsuit. And again, we won't get too deep into that here tonight. I know Amber was asking about it at the start of the show here. We're all monitoring it, but we're not going to give too deep of thoughts on it until all of that is resolved, hopefully in the coming months here. But in the meantime, finally tonight, let's close the show out with the Indy NXT race results here. There we go, we've got them. Congratulations to Myles Rowe on scoring his second career victory, both on ovals, coming from 9th to 1st to win the season finale at Nashville. Of course, Dennis Hauger crowned your champion. You see him rounding off the podium there, but Kobe, you and I have a chance to talk to Myles almost 3 years ago now. He was our last guest on a show we used to have called Life on the Grid. We were able to bring him on to the show, get to hear more about his story, his life, and his career, and his drive up the road to Indy ladder. He's now an Indy NXT race winner. Do you think that he could be an Indy NXT champion this time next year in 2026 if he can continue to progress how he has the last 2 seasons?
I think if you look at the stories of Myles' career, I have his stats pulled up, and Myles typically tends to trend upward in year 2. And if he gets, it's already been announced that he's planning to come back next year to run full time with the exact same team. And I think that would be great for him to get a 3rd year in Indy NXT, because what you're really looking for is in year 1, you may not see someone like the world on fire, but it's year 2 where you can see if there's progress. And I remember, when IndyCar, put together this the diversity program to bring a driver of color up into the series. We had Ernie Francis Jr. He was the first one to bring this up. It was kind of strange at the time because Ernie Francis, he was really tearing it up, multi-time champion in the Trans Am series, and so it has more like a stock car background. Then they put him in an open wheel car, and it did not go well at all. And then once they, cut ties with Ernie, they signed Myles to this car to this program. And in 2021, when he was in USF Pro 2000, no, it was just USF 2000, in 2021, 2022, and his rookie year, 2021, in USF 2000, he was 13th in the standings. He got his first career win towards the back end of the season at New Jersey Motorsports Park and finished 13th in the standings. So, a lot of learning that year. And then you look at year 2 in the USF 2000 series. He was with one of the top teams there, in Pabst Racing. And Myles Rowe won multiple races and finished second in the championship. So to go from 13th to second in the championship, that is a massive accomplishment. And then 2023 USF Pro 2000, graduated to that series, and he had a phenomenal season. Ended up winning the championship there, got the scholarship money to move on to Indy NXT. And last year was his rookie year. He did not win a single race. Had a lot of growing pains. Remember, summer stretch was not good for him at all. Multiple finishes outside of the top 15 and ended up just outside the top 10, 11th in the standings. And then this year saw remarkable improvement from Myles. Last year was a year of learning, and this year it seemed like he was really coming into his own, especially on the back end of the season. Had multiple podiums. I believe he got a runner-up finish at Gateway, and while he has shown a lot of improvement on the road and the street courses in Indy NXT, he's really taken a huge step on the ovals. Look like, Myles, that's going to be his strength, is on the oval. Got a runner up at Gateway. I was right about that. He won the short oval at Iowa and didn't end up winning the race. It was yesterday morning. Sorry, I forgot. I was thinking it was Saturday. Yeah, but right before the IndyCar race, we had the Indy NXT race. That's when Myles won on Sunday morning before the IndyCar race. Yeah, so Myles looked like he's really getting along well with the ovals, and since they're going to bring back the exact program next year, if you look at the trajectory of Myles' career and how he improves each year, you go from fourth. You can't do much better, than third, second, or a championship win. I think it's obviously going to depend on who's in the championship next year, but I certainly think right now, based on what's been announced, and we have very little been announced about Indy NXT as in regards to 2026. I think Myles is certainly one of the championship favorites right now, especially since Dennis Hauger is almost all but certain going to be graduating to IndyCar in some form. We don't know if Hauger is going to be with Andretti, their main team, or if he's going to be loaned out. I guess it determines on what happens, with Will Power's situation, what happens with Colton Herta, and all of that to figure out where Dennis Hauger is going to go. But one thing is for sure, Hauger's, champion this year, and he's more than likely going to IndyCar next year, so you won't have to deal with him. The only thing I wonder is Kyle Collette going to come back another year for IndyCar, for the Indy NXT series, and also Salvador de Alba. Lockie Hughes had some good runs as well, so there still could be quite a bit of competition for Myles to face next year, even with Dennis Hauger. Moving on, and one note on Hauger, talking about switching series, he ran extremely well on the road to F1, but did not make it to F1, and he could have potentially went to IndyCar this year full time, but kind of like Colton would be doing, going to F2, to try to learn the Pirelli tire in that system. Dennis Hauger came over here instead of going straight into IndyCar because he's talked on the record, said that he had sponsors, that he could have gotten an IndyCar seat this year, but he figured it was smart to go to Indy NXT, learn the IndyCar environment, the Firestone tire, and also oval racing, since they don't have any of that in Europe.
Yeah, depending on where these dominoes fall with Kyle Collette, Dennis Hauger moving up to IndyCar, Salvador de Alba, depending on where they end up, Myles Rowe, to me, is almost a shoe-in for the title next year. I think you said it, Kobe. His growth year over year has been phenomenal, and to win the season finale here at Nashville, showing his improvement on ovals yet again, I think he's going to be in your top 3 in next year's standings, if not the champion.
Yeah, I have to say I love what Myles has done. I think he's taken this path the correct way and not rushing his way up the ladder. And Kobe, you mentioned Dennis Hauger wanting to do the same thing, get used to the environment in Indy NXT for 1 year. You said it perfectly. Myles, I think, is a second-year driver. As he's proven he's a second-year driver, I guess, with the exception of USF Pro 2000, where he won the championship in 23. But it historically has taken him a year or two to get up to speed, and then he really starts to be a contender for the series title. And He came up just a few points short of catching Lockie Hughes there for third in the standings, had to settle for fourth there, but still a tremendous jump from his rookie year in Indy NXT. We'll see, how he does coming back next year. I'm very excited that he's gotten that confirmed that he'll be back in the series, because I think he's proven this year with the progression that he's made that he thoroughly deserves it. You said it best, Kobe, about the ovals. Winning at Iowa and then the drive through the field at Nashville to win that one. I think he's gotten those figured out. If he can just continue to progress a little bit, not that he hasn't quote unquote figured out the road and street courses. He had a couple of podiums at IMS on the road course earlier this year, but if he can continue to take even more steps forward there, like you said, Brandon, we'll see how the rest of the dominoes fall into place here. But he could certainly, I think, be a contender for the championship next year, and I think he's got the right mindset and attitude to do just that. So we wish him nothing but the best. We'll see, how his career path continues to form here. But in the meantime, we're all through our race recaps for the evening. So that means we're going to close out the show with our one shining moment. Kobe, I have to confess, I only caught part of the wrap-up show today. I don't know what your one shining moment was on the wrap-up show, but if you want to give a different one here, since you're a guest on the Encore show tonight, or you just want to repeat for the Encore viewers what you said earlier this afternoon, what was the one thing that stood out to you from this weekend in the world of motorsports?
Earlier this afternoon, I chose something from IndyCar. I chose Joseph Newgarden as my shining moment, given a rough season that he's had, and to finally close out with a win at home. Felt like that was much needed medicine and therapy for him heading into the off season. And one last thing I wanted to add about Myles Rowe before I get into my ultimate shining moment for this show, Ben. I wanted to say, we talked about, the situation going on with Will Power right now. Who's one of Myles Rowe's biggest advocates? Will Power at Team Penske. In the program they have right now, the diversity, program with Myles Rowe. If Will Power is at the door, and who's going to be Myles' biggest advocate at the organization? I wonder if losing Will Power is going to have any effect on what Penske is going to do with Myles Rowe in the future. And that's one of the biggest questions I have moving forward, because when before Myles even got on the road to Indy in 2021, Will Power, he'd been talking about this kid Myles Rowe. If you just give him a chance, that he's going to go out there and do good things and show that Will Power has a great eye for talent. He knew Myles Rowe could do what he's doing right now, and he's repaying Will's faith in him. And I'm sure, Will is, pushed really hard for Myles. He has been pushing hard for him, but I wonder how Penske will handle the situation with Myles, because I know they're in an interesting situation. If Power is out, and then Malukas goes into that seat, I wonder who gets that number 4 next year at Foyt. I know it would seem like a smart move. Well, maybe not smart, but to put Myles, I don't know if you would. I know it's already been announced he's going back to Indy next year, but it will be interesting to see what they do for 2026 in that number 4 seat if Malukas indeed graduates to become a Team Penske driver, because I wonder if Myles wins the championship next year, would he potentially go to Ford, as a Penske junior driver? So that's just some food for thought there. But my ultimate one shining moment, it comes from the Xfinity Series. Want to give another shout out to Austin Green for getting his 7th career 10th place finish in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Last 2 years, Austin Green, I guess you can call him a road course ringer. He really just gets it done for Jordan Anderson on these road courses. In 2024, he had 3 top 10 finishes at COTA, Sonoma, and Chicago. And then this year, he has 4 top 10s at Mexico City, Chicago, Watkins Glen, and Portland. And it just shows, it's just really impressive what Austin Green's able to do on these road courses. Whenever he's entered, shows up, he goes out there and performs. And it just makes me wonder, if you get Austin Green in a top tier ride, could he go out there and potentially win you a road course race? Because he's shown, given his background in road course racing, that he can get the job done in these tracks. I know he doesn't have nearly as much oval racing experience as he does on the road courses, but I think if you look at what happened in the ARCA race at Charlotte, late in the spring, he got in one of the top rides there, Second Pinnacle Racing Group Chevrolet. He went out there and won the race. So Austin Green is one driver, I think, who deserves to get an opportunity to run for a more competitive organization just to show what he can do. I think if you put him in top tier equipment, he could put, once Connor Zilisch is out of the Xfinity Series, goes to Cup, maybe Austin Green could be someone who could get the job done for you on a road course and better equipment, as he, as you obviously want him to later on develop some oval racing skills. I know he has a few starts on the oval, but not nearly enough.
Well, I second your one shining moment there for Joseph Newgarden and winning the series finale this year at Nashville. when you take a look back at what Team Penske has gone through this year alone. I also want to go ahead and give another spotlight to a couple from Darlington, Legacy Motor Club. I've talked about them before on my One Shining Moment. Eric Jones, John Hunter Nemechek, the Sober or Slammer 200 also going on as well. And Trevor Bain, congratulations on a top 5. But for the Cup Series, rather, Eric Jones and John Hunter Nemechek, 3rd and 4th, respectively, in the Southern 500. They just continue to keep building that program. And with Jimmy Johnson coming back over to the States, kind of being all in on it, I think it's been on the up and up. And John Hunter Nemechek also leading 15 laps there in between pit cycles as well.
All right, both of those are great, guys. It's been a while since I've been on the Women Motorsports Show, so I want to give a shout out to a couple of F1 Academy drivers. F1 Academy back this weekend at Zandvoort. Leah Block finishing 2nd in race 1, long overdue first podium for her. Arguably should have had a couple at this point already, and did finish 3rd on the road last year at Abu Dhabi before a time penalty sent her to the back of the grid there. But well done to her for finishing 2nd. But the ultimate shining moment is Nina Gateman, and I've got to confess, the Instagram post that she put out this morning actually got me a little emotional, talking about everything that she has had to overcome, including just this weekend. She's been nursing an injury all year, and they originally declared her unfit to drive this weekend. She was going to miss out on her home race, and it's also her birthday this weekend as well. And they did some further tests, reevaluated her a little bit later, and then said, you know what, you're ready to go. And she got the chance to start up running race 1 and converted that to a well-deserved victory. I know she had a shot at a victory earlier this year and had a mechanical failure take that away from her. So an incredibly emotional win for Nina in F1 Academy, and everything that she had to overcome, and to do it in front of her home crowd on her birthday. What more could you ask for? So that is far and away for me the one shining moment for this weekend, but also certainly for us here in America as well. I want to say well done to Leah Block on her maiden podium as well this weekend. So that's going to do it for us here tonight on the Encore Show. Thank you so much for tuning in here once again, and be sure to follow the Grid Network on all social media platforms at Grid Network TV, X/Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. All the microblogging platforms, we're on all 3 of them: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and LinkedIn. Most importantly, subscribe to us here on the YouTube channel and visit our website at gridnetworktv.com. Now, as I said at the start of the show, if you liked what you saw tonight, if you liked what you saw from Joe Samniego this week, and you want to see trackside coverage more often, you can consider taking a few minutes after the show to join Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew in investing in the Grid Network through Patreon to help us continue to expand our coverage throughout the rest of 2025 and into 2026 and beyond. You can also become a member of the Grid Network YouTube channel, or if you'd rather make a one-time contribution to us instead, you can tip us on YouTube through Super Chat or Super Thanks if you're watching us after the fact, not live, or you can visit the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description box below as well. Any amount will continue to help us grow our motorsports media outlet. Now, taking a look at our upcoming schedule, Kobe, you're going to be back on Wednesday with Grid Tonight as usual with with Josh Birch and Matt White. So make sure you all stay tuned for that. Continuing our new pre-race show format coming up this weekend. Stay tuned for return to standard Grid Live programming. No trackside coverage this week, but we'll continue to keep you all covered on the races going on this weekend. Hopefully, Women in Motorsports will be back sooner rather than later with a new episode. So stay tuned for that when that drops as well. And then we will see you on a not quite an hour and a half showtime tonight. So I guess 166.5 hour break here next Monday night for the Encore Show. Kobe, since you're our guest tonight, I'll go to you first. Any final thoughts you want to close the show with before we sign off for the evening?
The other thing I just want to say, as of right now, we don't really have a main story for Grid Tonight at the moment, but we're the one headline that we're going to be following. Already talked about it just a little while ago. Will Power, his situation. Today he was supposed to have this big meeting with Roger Penske to discuss his future, and if that meeting went down, Will Power knows what it's going to be, but based on the mood in Nashville, it seems like it's only trending in one direction. That is probably going to be game over for him at Team Penske, but we'll know for sure sooner rather than later. So hopefully that news will come out either tomorrow or Wednesday, so we can, follow all of the happenings in IndyCar and all throughout, the next few weeks and months are going to be a lot of IndyCar silly season news to talk about because we thought it was going to be a really quiet silly season, maybe just a couple of openings, and then if Willpower becomes available and Colton Herta goes to the road to F1 ladder system, and God forbid Alex Palou decides to jump over to Formula One, then it's going to become chaotic in the IndyCar paddock. So every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll have IndyCar silly season coverage if news comes out. And also this weekend, looking forward to the FIA World Endurance Championship getting back in action at Lone Star Le Mans. They'll be having their American round at Circuit of the Americas.
As always, Kobe. Yeah.
Thank you, Kobe. Brandon, what are your final thoughts as we close out the show here?
Well, I just want to take a moment to spotlight the official start of the college football, and also just want to congratulate the long career of Coach Lee Corso on College Game Day. As many of you know, this was his last run at it this past weekend, and a wonderful career of putting on the mascot heads of who he thinks is going to win that day, the big marquee game. And not so fast, my friend. And yo are some of his best quotes of all time. All of his last picks, by the way, this weekend were perfect. He got them all. And even when all of the panel went with Alabama over Florida State, he went with he's got his list of places that he's either coached at or played with. Florida State was one of those. He was the only one that picked the Seminoles, and they got it done over 8th ranked Alabama this past weekend. And also the reason I'm wearing all of this is because for the first time since 1987, the Austin Peay State University Governors beat an FBS team. And this was on the road. The last time they did it was 1987 at Kansas State. This time they did it and they beat MTSU, and they're the FCS team of the week, my alma mater here. And not only did they call it an upset, but it was 34-14. So I feel like that was just the better football team there. So y'all be thinking about us. If you want to root for an underdog, they're going to Georgia this weekend. So let's go P.
Brandon, I know how you're feeling because UNC Charlotte, we're going to Georgia in November, and I know. Yeah, it's funny. It's a few months ahead of time now, but I already know we're going to get blown out extremely badly by Georgia. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be. Like we're just going to take the paycheck and move on. That's basically what it is.
Yes, but lots of lessons learned in Athens.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I know you're a Tar Heels fan in college basketball. I know you got your UNC Charlotte 49ers in football. I don't know if you've been following UNC football with Bill Belichick. Obviously, they just trying to monitor the start of their season here. They just scored an opening touchdown. I don't know if you saw Belichick's reaction there, but he's back like he never left. That is very on brand, I think, for Bill Belichick. Couldn't start the season off any better, and still has his poker face on as he begins his new chapter of his coaching career at UNC. But as Delawarean, I guess I'll shout out my Delaware Blue Hens. They got the win over Del State, their first FBS victory as they've made that jump this year. So good for them. We'll see if that program can continue to rise down there in Delaware. For my final thoughts, I want to expand a little bit on my one shining moment. And again, just highlighting Nina Gateman and her pouring her heart out in this Instagram post that she put out this morning. I think it's a good reminder for all of us, not just what we do here at Grid Network, but as fans, as we follow these teams and follow these drivers, we see a very small portion of their lives in front of the camera. A lot of times we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes and how much they've had to overcome. And certainly we can be critical when it's warranted. I mean, goodness knows how much I've, come down on Austin Hill for his antics over the last 3 or 4 weeks here. I think when it's warranted, it's our job to call it out and provide harsh but fair and true criticism of these drivers when they make those decisions or make those mistakes. But we have to remember we're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all, have our struggles that we don't see, when we come together and share those parts of our lives. There's a lot that we don't see that we don't share that, it's going on behind the camera, behind the scenes that, we're not aware of. And I think sometimes it's easy for us to forget that. So I think it's just a good reminder for everybody, no matter what your role is that you play in the sport, this is a sport that will rip your heart out and be very gut wrenching at times. And that's what makes the victory so sweet. But, we have to keep that in mind as we talk about these drivers. The overwhelming majority of them, of course, some have billionaires for fathers that have, put them in top flight equipment right away and have had to work hardly at all compared to the ones that had to nickel and dime their way through things. But everybody's going through something that you can't see. And, it is a grind. It is a journey for the overwhelming majority of these drivers, even to just get to the point that they're at now, let alone continue to try to work up the ladder and get one of those few coveted seats to the top flights in the world of motorsports. So let's just remember that as we're all taking these races in and talking about them as fans of the sport that we all love so very much. So with that reminder, we'll sign off for the show tonight. Thank you, Kobe, for joining us. For Kobe Lambeth, for Brandon Crossland, I'm Ben Schneider. We'll see you next time. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll sign off with a comment from one of our regulars here, A Day in My Life. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we truly appreciate it. And happy Labor Day to those of you that had an off day from work today. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you here next week. Have a great rest of your night and great rest of your week, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Encore Show.